Hello friends, how are you all doing? I hope everyone is doing fine except me. Well, as you all know that Marvel have more than 8,000 superheroes. They differ in their abilities, powers and personalities. Some of them have a very cold personality, or some are kind, where some are very ruthless. They are so ruthless to point where if you start calling them villains, no one will object you. Today we are going to see top 10 most ruthless superheroes in Marvel Comics. Just to let you know, this list only includes superheroes and anti-heroes. So if you want to see a list of villains, tell me in the comments. So let's get started at number 10. We have Elektra. Elektra Natchios first made her appearance in Frank Miller's Daredevil run. Elektra began her career as an assassin in her college days following the death of her father. Since then, she has used her talent for death to gut supervillains, stab ninjas, and become the head of the nefarious Han Ninja clan. Ever treading the line between her inner darkness and her desire for light, Elektra is undoubtedly one of Marvel's deadliest heroes. Elektra falls into something of a buffer zone on this list. She's somewhere between the more calm and collective violent types on the Marvel superhero roster, such as Black Widow, and the total psychotics who would be considered villains if they didn't primarily target villains themselves, such as, well, you'll see. Elektra is ultimately considered a professional, one of the best in the world, in fact, which means that there is at least a theoretical limit to her violent ways. During her initial run, much of Elektra's prowess as a skilled killer was referenced rather than explicitly shown. As time went on and the character enjoyed her own run, we got to see more of what makes Elektra such a fearsome individual. Her skills with all manners of life-ending tools and techniques certainly make her dangerous, but her more violent moments seem to stem from her generally neutral stance on the morality of murder. Number 9 is Ghost Rider. Just in case the Nicolas Cage adaptations have affected your memory of the character, let's be clear that Ghost Rider is still an awesome character who stands out from the pack by virtue of his darkly violent nature. Throughout the time, we have seen his violent nature decreasing, but still, he is the spirit of vengeance, the agent of death, the king of hell, and one of the strongest characters in Marvel. He only works for his virtues. If you are a sinner, then it doesn't matter if you are rich or poor, hero or villain, you will be punished. This often leads to him having conflicts with several superheroes. At one point, he even killed Doctor Strange, but that's what makes him fan favorite. He doesn't follow law or anything, and he is powerful enough to stand for his own belief. A few people have assumed the Ghost Rider role over the years, but regardless of the person who's taken up the mantle, the hyperviolent nature of the spirit of vengeance remains the same. Ghost Rider has no problem burning someone's essence from within, or simply beating them to death with a chain. He is arguably one of the most powerful Marvel heroes in existence, and is certainly one of the most violent. Number 8 is Nick Fury. For the most part, Nick Fury occupies the same buffer zone as Elektra. There is a fair argument to be made that Elektra leans more towards the chaotically violent side, but you also have to take into consideration Fury's potential for violence. This guy is a nearly lifelong soldier who enjoys the status that he holds in the Marvel Universe, thanks in large part to his unwavering belief that war can solve most problems, and particularly aggressive tactics can solve them even faster. Then, you have stories like the Fury Max run, which portray the character in a decidedly more ferocious light. Fury Max, and some other storylines like the original Sin and stories similar to it, suggests that the title character is a man who needs violence and war in his life, just as Superman needs the power of our sun to fuel his abilities. Without that violence, Fury feels that he is lost and dying. As such, he settles for any war he can find. In that respect, he's truly a modern-day. Number 7 is Blade. As a rule, if you carry a sword in comics, you tend to be sending a message to the world that you're open to the possibility of extreme violence. When you're named after said weapon, you're really committing yourself to an extremely destructive path. Half vampire, half man, Blade may mostly kill vampires, but he slays them with such ferocity and regularity that you almost start to feel bad for the hordes of undead that fall to his sword, almost anyway. Actually, Blade is somewhat unique in the Marvel universe, in that he seems to be one of those characters that Marvel writers use to enact their more violent ideas, simply because they know there are few audiences that weep over dead vampires. Blade appreciates that there's very little room for decency when you're killing vampires, and he approaches his chosen duty with a level of intensity that would make him Marvel's biggest supervillain if he chose to target humans. Number 6 is Venom. Well, is Venom a hero or a villain? Venom is one of the characters with a short run time of being a hero, but still, he became one of the most ruthless heroes in that small runtime. Venom need to eat brain time to time, but he changed it with chocolate. Venoms influence his users' emotions and leans them towards their aggressive and negative side. Even if they act as heroes, his appearance and methods doesn't differ from any other villains. Number 5 is Hulk. Hulk's position on the good ole hierarchy of violence is always going to be impacted by the influence of that goody two-shoes Bruce Banner. If it weren't for Banner, you could be sure that Hulk would be considered a top 3 violent force in the Marvel Universe. Nevertheless, you have to account for the fact that the Green Goliath's potential for violence is severely hindered by Banner's desire to suppress his alter ego whenever possible. There have been moments, most notably the Planet Hulk World War Hulk series, when we see what Hulk is truly capable of when he isn't being burdened by any kind of moral filter. In his purest form, the Emerald Beast is an incredibly violent warrior whose ability to tear through human lives and wreak havoc is surpassed only by his desire to do so. Hulk is the man who once ripped Wolverine in half and threw his legs on top of a mountain. He does not care, he smashes. Number 4 is Wolverine. Right from the start, Wolverine was envisioned as a relentlessly brutal character. Actually, the earliest incarnation of the famed anti-hero toed the hero-villain line pretty tightly. As writers explored the character further, that ambiguity never really went away. Wolverine was born into violence and gained his trademark adamantium skeleton as the result of a particularly violent experiment designed to turn him into the ultimate weapon. While the X-Men helped him get in touch with his humanity, there's really only so much you can humanize the world's perfect killing machine. Besides, even the X-Men have found plenty of chances to take advantage of Logan's relentless ability to inflict violence. All things being equal, Wolverine would likely be okay living a semi-peaceful life. The thing about that is that there's always someone out there that gives him cause to inflict tremendous violence, never one to not put forth his full effort. Wolverine has repeatedly responded to these individuals with a level of brutality that is simply awe. Number 3 is Moon Knight. Moon Knight certainly represents a dramatic shift towards total violence in comparison to some of the heroes discussed thus far, but that's a feature of the Marvel Universe in general. There is a distinct line between heroes in the Marvel Universe who exhibit violent qualities and heroes who are murder machines in tights. Moon Knight is definitely a murder machine in tights. Actually, unlike some of the other heroes mentioned thus far, the Moon Knight just got more violent as a character as the years went on. Writers began to explore Mark Spector's multiple personality disorder in depth, as well as his desire to please ancient gods of violence. This combination of characteristics has led to Moon Knight becoming an increasingly unstable individual. He might be contemplating the capacity of humanity one moment and tearing the face off of his rival the next. Moon Knight's general instability makes him a real wild card who is always capable of tremendous violence. Number 2 is our friendly neighborhood Deadpool. Wolverine and Deadpool possess similar abilities to inflict great harm upon those who oppose them. If there's one thing that separates the two, it's that Deadpool absolutely loves violence. He even loves to violently destroy his own body. Actually, that doesn't even really capture his views on the matter. Deadpool sees violence as the ultimate form of vindication. He's been dealt a pretty bad hand in life and has rightfully come to the conclusion that the best thing he can do with his existence is to become the ultimate assassin. Of course, Deadpool also takes great pleasure from his most horrific acts. That may make him sound like a supervillain, or at least a straight-up serial killer. But those who know the Deadpool character also know that the merc with a mouth is ultimately a force for good, who simply doesn't see why he shouldn't take a little pleasure in fighting the good fight. Sure, that means he might occasionally do things like make puppets of his enemies' remains, but if that makes him a bad person, then so be it. Number 1 is Punisher, who is also one of my favorites. The Punisher is number 1 with several thousand bullets. Actually, was there ever really any question that Frank Castle would top any countdown of Marvel's most violent heroes? Even in Punisher's early days, he represented the kind of anti-hero that was typically only seen in rated R films. There was a nobility to his actions even then, but it was clear that the man with a skull on his chest and a large rifle wasn't exactly intended to be another superpowered Boy Scout. As Punisher's character evolved, however, he reached a new level of comic book violence. Punisher has long ceased trying to justify his actions. The fact that evil exists is enough for him. In the name of destroying that evil, he had done things like rip the entrails of a pedophile out with his bare hands. In fact, with a kill count said to be upwards of 48,000 people, it's hard to imagine how Punisher could be any a more violent superhero than he currently is. So that's the list I come up with. If I missed any bloodthirsty hero that deserves a spot on here, let me know in the comments. If you like the video even a little bit, then subscribe my channel and press the bell icon. We will meet in next one.